All right, Harold, just to let you know, we are now live. It looks good. Everything's
Okay.
working properly.
Okay.
Uh, about 3.5 minutes, I'll do the intro for you, and then we'll kick it off.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for joining us, everyone, for this week's virtual event. Today, we're happy to introduce Harold Morris, who is a senior product coach for Leaderboard and Market Surge. He has traded stocks using the Can Slim strategy since 1998. Mr. Morris began working for Investors Business Daily in April 2002 and has been involved in all aspects of IBD's investing workshops and home study courses, including serving as a national educational speaker. Harold specializes in providing introductory, intermediate, and advanced investing seminars to individual and professional investors alike, and has been successful at teaching them how to spot emerging growth stocks that meet IBD's investing criteria. And with that said, Harold, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mark, for the wonderful introduction. And thank you, everyone, for attending, taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today's session. So as you see on your screen there, today's subject is how to succeed in the stock market with IBDs. And I am your host. Again, my name is Harold Morris, and Mark just did a wonderful job of my who I am. I'm a senior product coach, IBD Live panelist. Time permitting, I'll talk about IBD Live. But I think the important thing is our mission. Our mission here at IBD is to help our IBD subscribers make more money in the market. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is how can we use the tools and information in IBD to make money in the market. But before we can get into that, we have the disclaimer. So I am not a licensed broker. No, nobody here at IBD is a licensed broker. So you cannot call or email us about uh, what stocks should you buy, when you should sell it, and everything we do today is for educational purposes only. All right. So what are we going to do today? What's on the agenda first? So I'm going to start out by just telling you who we are. for those of you who aren't familiar with IBD. I'm going to talk about our four pillars of IBD investing methodology. There's four primary ways that we approach the market. Give you a quick overview of the different products that we have. I'm going to spend most of my time on a three-step process using our IBD digital product. And I'm going to talk about what kind of support we have and what you can do to get started with IBD today. And time permitting, we'll do some Q&A. All right, so IBD, who are we? So IBD, we were founded by William J. O'Neill back in 1984. So we have been around a very long time here, and we were acquired by Dow Jones in 2021. It was March of 2021. So we are a Dow Jones company. However, one of the things that Dow Jones has said when they first acquired us is they're still going to let IBD be IBD. So we're still operating the same way as we have in the past there. IBD. So what's our approach to the market? So we have a fact-based strategy that we use to put money in the market and make money in the market. And it's a strategy that anyone, if you're willing to put in the time, this is not a get rich quick strategy, but if you're willing to put in the time and do the work, anyone can be successful with the strategy that we use to invest and trade the markets. So our approach is basically there's three primary ways we approach the market. With fundamental analysis, a lot of people know us or think of us as a momentum company, but we put a lot of emphasis on the fundamentals of the stock, the sales, the earnings, profit margin. So we are very big on the fundamentals. In fact, that's where we start. Unless the stock has some strong fundamentals, we're not going to look at that stock unless it has some very strong fundamentals. And then we use the technical analysis to decide or to make a decision as to when we want to buy the stock or when it's time to sell the stocks. We use the chart to do that, to make those decisions. And then market timing. This is extremely important. You can time the market despite what the media has, what the media says. But market timing is extremely important. We put a huge emphasis on market timing here because, you can do all the things with your fundamental analysis. You can do all the right things there. You can do all the right things as far as your chart analysis. But if you're not in the market at the right time and out of the market at the right time, all that work that you put in, doing these two things is not going to pay off as well as you should. So here at IBD, we have what we call it now the four pillars of the IBD methodology. We used to say CAN SLIM. Unfortunately, we cannot use the acronym CAN SLIM. That is our former company, William O'Neill. They own that CAN SLIM acronym. So we changed, and our approach is still the same. We just can't use that acronym. So these are the four pillars of our analysis that I mentioned a moment ago with the fundamental analysis. Then we like to time our buys and sells using the chart, using technical analysis. Actually, sometimes I think this should be number one, but to stay in phase with the market, we look at what the overall market is doing. We know that stocks follow the trend of the market. We especially seen that this year when the market topped in February of this year, sold off in February. Stocks are selling off with it. We bottomed in early April, and the market started to move up, and stocks are moving up with it. So very important to know what the overall trend of the market is. Excuse me. And then risk management. Basically, we're talking about selling stocks or position sizing. So risk management is extremely important. And if you're going to stay in the game, you got to be able to manage your risk. The number one way we do that is selling the stock if it drops 7 to 8% below where you bought the stock here. And that's one way we manage risk here. All right, and this is a brief overview of the different products we have. So we have products for those who are very advanced to those who are just starting out. Probably our most advanced product is the Market Search product. The Market Search, that is it's a charting service. So Market Search, you have to be the type of person that says, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves and I'm gonna do my own screening of stocks. I'm gonna do my own analysis. I'm gonna determine when to buy the stock and I'm gonna determine when to sell the stock. So Market Search is for your more experienced investors and traders. then we have a product called Swing Trader. Now, Swing Trader, it's very rapid in and out trading. So with Swing Trader, they're looking to buy a stock, make an 8 to 10% profit, and then get out and move on and look for something else. Sometimes they'll hold it for a longer period, but typically they're looking for short-term profits, and then they'll get out. And then IBD Live. So IBD Live, I mentioned a moment ago, it's a live trading program that we have here at IBD. So IBD, about 10 minutes before the market opens, we talk about the news of the day, and then once the market opens, we start bringing up charts, showing you how we analyze the markets and what our approach is to buy and to sell stocks. So that's IBD Live. We have a product called Leaderboard. So Leaderboard, it is managed by some portfolio managers here at IBD. So what they're doing is they're looking at the different lists here at IBD, and then they send out alerts when they're going to take a position in a stock. So they'll send out alert when they're going to take a position. They'll send out alert when they're going to add to that position. They'll also send out alerts when they're going to sell that position. A very similar thing happens in the swing trader. It's just that the time frame is different. Swing trader, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's for short-term profits, whereas leaderboard is more your typical. We want to buy the stock and hold it as long as possible. So again, both swing trader and leaderboard, they're managed by portfolio managers here at IBD. And again, when they go to take a position in the stock, then they'll send out alerts saying they're going to buy the stock, and they give you the price where they're going to buy it. So that's your leaderboard there. And then we have the IBD Digital. That's our basic subscription. We're going to spend most of our time with the IBD Digital. So IBD Digital gives us, your lists like the IBD 50. That's what IBD is most known for. But there are other lists as part of this IBD Digital subscription. One of my favorite lists is a list called the Stock Spotlight. And don't have time to get into what that list is all about. But your IBD Digital. So if you're just starting out, IBD Digital is where you want to start here. And then we also have another product called Market DM. So Market DM, it is an email newsletter. It gets delivered somewhere around 9 a.m. Pacific time, and it's got a lot of good information. Stocks that are moving, stocks that are setting up, stocks that are not doing so well. So the Market DM, again, it's delivered by email, and it's a very good, I call it hard hitting information as to what's going on with the market and what stocks are doing well. All right, so the IBD Digital I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to spend a lot of time on that. So we're going to come back to the IBD Digital a little bit later here. And the Market DM, again, that's that newsletter where we send out, it arrives somewhere around 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's probably already delivered looking at the time here. Okay, and then the IBD Digital. So here's where I want to spend most of our time with the IBD Digital. We have a three-step process or a three-step routine that we use to get the most out of your IBD Digital subscription. We start by checking what the market is doing. As I mentioned a moment ago, stocks will follow the trend of the market. So it's very important to know what that trend is. And that's why we have an article in IBD called The Big Picture, where we look at what the market is doing. And then once we're familiar with what the market is doing, then we want to start to look for stocks. I mentioned a list called the IBD 50, but there are other lists that are very good as far as finding stock ideas with the IBD 50, and then with the IBD different IBD stock lists. And then once you find a stock from one of the lists, then you want to evaluate that stock. It's not enough just to look at the list and say, okay, I like this stock, I'm going to go with that. No, you need to do a little bit more research. And we have a tool on our website, which is part of the IBD Digital subscription. It's called the Stock Checkup. I know a lot of our customers will use IBD as a final authority when it comes to making a decision as to when to buy a stock. Because you get a lot of information from a lot of different sources, and a lot of people will use a tool called the Stock Checkup to evaluate that stock before they say, okay, I'm comfortable with it. I see what IBD is saying about it. I'm comfortable with the stock. I'm going to go ahead and make a purchase. I'm going to purchase this stock. And all right, so the three-step process. This is using the IBD Digital. So first thing is checking what the market is doing. And as I mentioned a moment ago, knowing what the market is doing, that is extremely important. So in the IBD Digital, we have this article here called The Big Picture. The Big Picture gives you some details as to what's going on in the overall market. And you need to know what the market is doing because I'm going to say it again, stocks do follow the trend of the market. So it's very important to know what that trend is. When I when I first look at the Big Picture article, we have this little box here in that article called the Market Pulse. I like to see what our exposure level is. I like to look at the distribution days. This category used to identify a potential top in the market, and we're getting kind of high as far as distribution day count. So this is the big picture articles. This is step one of that three-step process. And then I skipped another, and then finding stocks. So once we're familiar with what the market is doing, we have a pretty good understanding as to what's going on in the overall market. Here's where we start to look for stocks. We had a different list, as I mentioned, IBD 50, Stock Spotlight, Big Cap 20. So there's a variety of different lists. There's stocks on the move for this is an algorithm that runs on the homepage at investors.com. It's an algorithm that's updating constantly throughout the market session. It's looking for stocks that are moving up in price on high volume. So there's a lot of institutional interest in these stocks on the move. This is on the homepage at investors.com. Then we have the screen of the day, we have a stock screener, and then we have the stock list. So once you're looking at the different lists, you can add stocks from like the IBD 50. You see a stock there, you can add it to a stock list. With the stock list, you can create 5 different stock lists, and each of those lists can hold up to 50 stocks. So as you're looking at say the IBD 50, you can add stocks to a list, and you can identify those lists. You give that list a name. You might have a list I have a list that I call ready. So these are stocks that are setting up right now. I also have a list for stocks that I own, and I also have a list that I call setting up. In other words, they're not quite ready just yet, but they're looking pretty good there. So I have 4 lists that I maintain on a regular basis there. So that's the stock list that you can use on the with the IBD 50, or excuse me, with the IBD digital subscription. And then the evaluation of our stock, as I mentioned a moment ago, this is just the stock checkup, which is on our homepage at investors.com. So the stock checkup will give you a breakdown on the stock on 30 different data points, fundamental, and technical data points. So this is the tool I mentioned a moment ago that a lot of our subscribers like to use this as a final authority to make a decision as to what they want to do with that stock here. All right, and then we are very big on education. So we have webinars that we do, live webinars, recorded webinars. We have a lot of free webinars on our website at investors.com. We do have live events. Now, these are not in-person events. These are done live. So, for example, we had one this past weekend that featured the leaderboard subscription. And then we have the IBD University. This is a place where you can get educated. And in my opinion, the number one risk management strategy is education, because if you're not educated, you won't know what to do with your portfolio. So we have a lot of information in the IBD University as to our approach with the market. Details on how do we analyze the market, when to sell, when to buy. There's a lot of information about that in the IBD University there. All right, and yeah, I got a little bit ahead of myself. Let me do this. I'm going to back up here. I'm going to spend more time here on the 3-step routine here. So you have the IBD digital. You like what you've heard about IBD. You say, okay, I've got the IBD digital. So again, we start with the big picture article, with the checking out what the current market is. So here's that big picture article. I got an outline here and the market pulse. And as I mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time here. First thing I look at is this market pulse box here. So right now in today's IBD, we have 5 distribution days on both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. Those are the 2 indexes that we look at to do our market analysis. And we're getting kind of high on the number of distribution days. The definition of distribution is just when either one of these indexes, whether it be the NASDAQ or the S&P 500, where the index closes down in price and on higher volume. So we track that. We're looking at a 25 trading day period, and we get to about 5 or 6 distribution days. That's a sign that the market is losing some of its momentum to the upside. That's what's happening in today's market. We peaked, I think it was about a week ago. I think it was August 13th, somewhere around there where we peaked, and we kind of been drifting lower in the last week or so. And some of your leading stocks are also showing signs of selling too. So we have a high number of distribution days. We actually lowered our exposure level from 80 to 100 to 60 to 80%. So in other words, um, what we're recommending in today's market, if with your portfolio, 60 to 80% of that portfolio should be invested in market. So if you have a portfolio of $100,000, the 60,000 to 80,000 of that portfolio should be invested in the market. And we just yesterday, as the close of yesterday, lowered it from the 80 to 100%, which is pretty much fully invested, to the 60 to 80%. And this is what the market is doing. We did so based on what the market is doing, not what we think about the market. We look at what the market is doing, and then we act accordingly. All right. So that's the big picture article. That's the first thing we do. So that's step one of the 3-step process. Step two, as I mentioned earlier, is finding stocks. So you have a good understanding as to what the market is doing. The primary list, what most people like to use, is a list called the IBD 50. IBD 50 is basically the top 50 growth stocks according to IBD. So that's the primary list. I also like a list called, well, there's several lists that I like, but there's a list that I tend to like a little bit better. It's called the Stock Spotlight. It tends to feature stocks in some of your top industry groups, and technically these stocks are holding up or setting up pretty nicely. So, Stock Spotlight and IBD 50. If you just use those two lists, you're going to be pretty good shape as far as finding potential stocks to buy. And with the market pulling back a little bit, now's a good time to be doing some research, because at the market pullback, stocks will be pulling back with it. And that's what, in fact, a lot of us here have been hoping for the market to pull back, because we've had a pretty good run since the follow through day. April 22nd, that's when in our big picture article, that's when we got the signal to get into the market. And this market has been very strong. I was doing some numbers prior to the open today. We are up about 30% from the fall 3 day that we had on April 22nd. So as I mentioned earlier, you can time the market, but IBD's market timing strategy, we got into the market on April 22nd, and it's been a very strong market. So what our market timing strategy, we won't get into absolute bottom. The market bottom on April 7th. We didn't know that was the bottom. We like to see the market prove itself. And then April 22nd, that's when we got the signal to get into the market, and it's been a very strong market. So with our market timing strategy, we won't get in the absolute bottom. We won't get out the top, but we will capture 80, 90% of an uptrend and be out of the market 80, 90% of a downtrend. So I know I kind of went backwards there, but this market direction, market timing is very important. So the market, then stock research, looking at lists called the IBD 50, Big Cap 20, Stock Spotlight, and then evaluating the stock. So that big picture article, the Stock Spotlight, that is the major tool that we use to find stocks and just do analysis. One thing that don't show here is the stock checkup. What it does, you enter a symbol, you pull up a stock, it'll show you how that stock rates within its industry group. Here at IBD, we track 197 industry groups, and the stock checkup will tell you how that stock ranks within that group. And if it doesn't rank so well, so let's suppose it doesn't have a very strong composite rating. Well, if it doesn't have a very strong composite rating, then it will show you the top 5 stocks in the same industry group. So I like to consider the stock checkup as a research tool. It's like a research assistant. You might pull up a poor stock, but it'll point you to some top stocks in the same industry. So that's the stock checkup there. And let's see, where are we? How are we doing on time here? Okay, well, any questions, Mark, you see coming through there? because I cannot see them on
Um,
my end.
yeah, I've got a couple of questions here. How much time per day or week should an average retail investor realistically expect to spend using IBD's process?
Okay, so I'd say on the weekends is when we tend to do most of our research. On the weekends, you typically have more time. I'd say at least take 20 to 30 minutes on a weekend to do some of your research, looking at what the market is doing. So that's typical. Let me just go, I'll share my routine. So I do my research Sunday morning. Okay, so I start by looking at the big picture. Let me just go back here. Sunday morning. So I'm looking at the big picture article. I'm looking at this here. Then I start to look for stocks like the list IBD 50, and then I use the stock checkup to show me, okay, is this stock worthy of a buy for my portfolio the upcoming week? So your time commitment, I would say at least 30 minutes on the weekends. And then during the week, it's more maintenance, looking at stocks in your portfolio, uh, looking and say, okay, where are you as far as the stocks that you already own? Stocks that maybe you looked at past weekend, maybe those aren't breaking down. So you say, okay, this doesn't look like it's working out. I'm going to be looking at other lists and um, trying to find some other stock ideas here. So I'd say a minimum 30 minutes on the weekend, and then another 15, maybe 20 minutes during the week to do some research there.
All right, great. That's good, insightful information. Another question is, can the methodology be applied to ETFs, or
Uh,
is it more effective with individual stocks?
Well, our primary focus is on individual stocks. Now, we do like with our this stock checkup here. You can plug in an ETF, but remember ETFs, they don't have sales and earnings. So some of the things are going to be blank, but you're going to get a lot of technical information using the stock checkup. So um, we do, especially with Leaderboard and the Swing Trader, those two products I mentioned earlier that are run by portfolio managers here. They use ETFs in both of those subscriptions. So yes, you can use IBD for spotting ETFs and the chart patterns because the chart patterns apply to ETFs the same way do the stocks. In fact, one ETF I've been looking at was XLF, which is the ETF for the financial sector of the market. So yes, you can use IBD for ETFs.
All right, thank you. Another question was, how does IBD's methodology differ from other popular approaches like value investing or index investing?
Yeah, so let me go back to this slide here. This one here. So our approach uh, it was fundamental analysis. I mentioned earlier here, we look at fundamentals and we combine it with the technicals. A lot of your value investors, they're only looking at the fundamentals of the stock, the sales or the earnings. They're only looking at that. There are other approaches where they said they're only primarily looking at the technicals. We use a combination of the fundamentals and the technicals, but we put a heavy emphasis on the fundamentals of the stock. One of the ratings that we have here at IBD is called a stock checkup. What the stock checkup does, uh, takes sales and earnings, profit margins, some technical information, volume levels, and it rolls it all up to this rating called the composite rating. And that composite rating takes it takes the information from that particular stock and then it compares it to all other stocks in the market. So if you bring up a stock that has a composite rating of 99 is the highest and best rating, what that is telling you that this stock is in the top 1% because again, that composite rating is comparing it to all other stocks in the overall market. So and that composite rating is weighted more towards the fundamentals of a stock. So it's about 70% fundamentals, 30% your technicals. So we're not just value only, we're not just fundamentals only. As I mentioned earlier, we do apply technical analysis. So we're a combination of value investing, looking at the fundamentals, but we use the technicals to time our entries and to time our exits.
All right, thank you, Harold. Another question is, do you provide a service for new investors in the stock market, or where would you recommend a beginner start?
So a beginner would start with the IBD digital product. That's what I've been talking mostly here. So there's that three-step routine that you'll be using with IBD. Now, uh, if you're brand new, you're just starting out, yeah, you can start a subscription, but it's also going to take some time. You got to get educated. We do have a lot of resources on our website, investors.com. So you're not going to take out a subscription today and just start buying tomorrow with the expectation that you're going to make money in the market. It does take time. You know, uh, it's just, I like to use the analogy of learning to play an instrument. If you want to learn to play the piano, it's going to take some time before you're very proficient at it. Same thing is true with investing. As I mentioned that earlier right at the beginning, this is not a get rich quick strategy here. It does take time, but if you're just starting out, IBD Digital is the first place you want to go. And then uh, uh, there's a book here, How to Make Money in Stocks, written by IBD founder William J. O'Neill. So I say the combination of the book, you want to read and study the book, How to Make Money in Stocks by William O'Neill, and then you take out your IBD Digital subscription and you start there. So that's where you would start out.
Okay, thank you. Very good recommendations, Harold. Another question was, what are the biggest mistakes retail investors make when trying to time and sell using IBD system?
Probably the biggest mistake is, I would say, position sizing. So, in other words, not knowing, we have what's called capital allocation. So, when we go to buy a stock, we're not going to jump in with both feet. So, we say we dedicate a portion of our portfolio to a stock. So, for example, in the leaderboard, they have, and the swing trader do the same thing. But I'm going to use leaderboard as an example. They have a portfolio of $100,000. A full position in leaderboard is 10% of the overall portfolio. In other words, so it's $10,000. That's what you should be doing with your overall portfolio, is allocating a portion of that, whether it be 5% or 10%. So I'd say the number one mistake people are making is position sizing. They get too large, and especially if the stock starts to break down, then that's when you see a lot of people have some sleepless nights because they know, hey, I've got a large position and it is not working. So position sizing is extremely important.
All right, thank you. So what would you recommend be the best way to, hedge against taking that extra risk, or do you have any recommendations where like a tool that they could find that
For
information?
hedging,
Yeah.
yeah, well, for hedging, we like to use the some of the inverse ETFs. Now, Um, with IBD Digital, we don't do a whole lot of that. And Leaderboard and in the Swing Trader, they do use hedging strategies. So for example, I know they haven't yet, but they might use SQQQ, which is three times the inverse of the QQQ as a hedging strategy for the stocks that are in the Leaderboard portfolio. Here. So we have articles about hedging, but your IBD Digital is not real big on hedging. So with IBD Digital, you're going to be looking to just to get out of the stock. One of the things for those who are new, I wouldn't try to get into hedging strategies right now. I would just focus more on sell signals. So with the market the way it is now, if you've been following IBD, it's best just to sell the stock, lock in some profits by selling. Also, probably the number one thing is keeping your losses as small as possible. That's why we have that rule of 7 to 8% where you sell it if the stock goes down 7 to 8% below where you bought it.
Okay, thanks again, Harold. And that's all the questions that I have here for you.
Okay.
As always, we here at Money Show appreciate IBD and yourself for coming and doing these presentations. They're very, very insightful.
Okay. Well, one last thing I want to point out is we do have an offer, which is below the video that you're watching. So it's the IBD Digital. You get 15 weeks, excuse me, 6 weeks for $15. So that's a great deal. So you can take advantage of that. That's just below the video that you're watching now. Again, it's 6 weeks of the IBD Digital for $15. If you like that Market DM newsletter, the email newsletter that I mentioned a moment ago that goes out every morning around 9 a.m. Pacific time, we have a pretty good promotion on that, $4.99 per month, or it's around $60 per year.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Harold.
Okay.
And thanks for all the attendees coming and all the great questions that you've asked.
Uh,
All right. See you in the next presentation, everyone.